Hello and welcome back to the Battle Room. My name is Colin, and today I wanted to talk about the top 16 teams from the most recent European International Championships that took place in London. So I was there myself. I placed 44th, which was nothing too crazy. I got some solid points in the day 2 race, but I wasn't one of the top finishers like I was at OCIC. So I wanted to talk about the top 16 teams just because there's so many people who got points for day 2, and I wanted to kind of just focus on more or less the people who went 11-3 or better. So I guess we'll talk about 18 teams here. So we'll start with Alberto's. For those who don't know who Alberto is a Pokemon god, someone who's played the game for a very long time, and someone who's been doing really, really well this season. So Alberto's team is one that is very familiar to Alberto, and it's not a team that we see a lot outside of Alberto himself. A team centered around Klefki plus Corviknight and Garchomp. I don't know. I don't think we're seeing that too much. These are Pokemon that, 4 of the Pokemon that Alberto's been using all season, and it's no surprise that Alberto was to do well with it here at this tournament. Unfortunately, Alberto went 11-3 but didn't get points for top 16, which really sucks for Alberto. Same with Desu right here. And the CP structure system, I'm not going to get into it, but it is kind of garbage and BS, but it's still a great finish from Alberto. 11-3 is nothing to slouch at, right? It's a pretty good record. Desu in the same boat as Alberto, getting less points and less money. Lovely. But with an equally cool team here, we got Chi-Yu Flutter, which we're seeing a lot of. We got Tinglu Gyarados, again, seeing a lot of. Amoonguss, one of the best Pokemon in the game. And then, of course, Glimmora. Probably one of the more weird picks here, but something that is still a really solid Pokemon. Now that we're in the top 16, let's talk about Nails' team. Nails has been honestly on a tear. I think this is the 5th tournament in a row they've gotten day 2 at, and Nails is no slouch. Nails did build this team on the airplane ride over, and it has no ruin. It's a Pala balanced team with the godlike core, but usually instead of the Ting-Lu or the Baxcalibur or Ting-Lu Roaring Moon, we're seeing a Dragonite Kingambit, which I think is pretty neat. I think Kingambit is very strong and very potent mon, especially with all the Gyarados and Arcanine's running around. I think Kingambit can really shine, especially with the right Terra type. So no surprise to see Nails doing well with Kingambit. Dragonite just kind of a cool pick, kind of a weird mon. And then Palafin, obviously one of the gods of the game right now. These 4 right here are absolutely insane. Next up here is Lucas' team with this same kind of Fluttermane. Amoonguss fire type is very, very common. Usually Chi-Yu or Arcanine. It's just kind of dominating the top tables. We see it right above us as well with Maddie Morgan. It's doing really, really well. Again, we're seeing Ting-Lu and Gyarados paired up. It's a great pair just because it weakens a lot of the damage that Gyarados normally take from stuff like Iron Bundle or electric moves, which aren't super common as is. So they're just a perfect pair. Perfect little match. Glimmora is pretty cool as well. Again, there weren't a ton of Glimmoras, but obviously, Glimmora's ability is just really, really broken, and we're seeing a lot of people use just Mortal Spin in general to just weaken the Pokemon for stuff like Chi-Yu and Fluttermane in the back. You just come in, clean everything up as they're dying to Toxic. It's really, really good. Maddie Morgan had a Dragonite Qianpao-centric team, but with that God Core. It's just Dragonite Qianpao with the Firewater Grass Fluttermane. It makes a lot of sense. We're going to see these 3 right here, plus Palafin is going to be everywhere. We see it right there. We're seeing it down here. It's just one of the best cores in the game, and it's just really difficult to get around that in team building. It's just so potent, and a lot of the time it just comes down to a skill diff and just outplaying your opponent and playing really, really well. We saw it in the finals of this tournament as well, that Palafin plus its 3 buddies here is just absurdly, absurdly broken. And then slapping on Qianpao Dragonite makes sense, right? Torviv here with Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Arcanine, and Palafin, Ting-Lu, but then this slot is usually the Dragon, and we're seeing Iron Hands there. I think Iron Hands is really cool, especially in the mirror. It does really well into Baxcalibur. It does pretty well in the Roaring Moon. It does well into Ting-Lu, Palafin. Hell, even Fluttermane with something like Heavy Slam. So there's a lot of options here for Iron Hands to pop off. I'd like Torviv's take on this team. It makes a lot of sense. It just gives more support to stuff like Palafin and Amoonguss and Flutter. So I like it. Then we got Pato here with a team, not similar to Alberto's, but it's got a Corviknight, right? It's got a Corviknight. It's got Chi-Yu Flutter. Similar Pokemon. It seems like a pretty cool team. Corviknight to help deal with the obnoxious duo here. Corviknight is also really, really good into opposing Intimidates, as it always will reflect back onto them. And also, it is great into stuff like Kingambit with the ability to run like Body Press and stuff like that. Kingambit kind of hates it. So it's a cool Pokemon to see here. I think Corviknight is pretty good. It's also a great partner with Ting Lu, just weakening special attack. Corviknight enjoys that. And yeah, phenomenal call here from Pato. I think Corviknight's cool. I like the addition of Corviknight onto this pretty common core. Next up is Pokealex here. I had the honor of playing Pokealex in the tournament. This team is pretty awesome. Iron Hands with no Fake Out and SD is pretty neat. Again, Iron Hands is a cool Pokemon into that really common core we talked about. And then Kingambit, like I mentioned earlier, is another great call. With all the Arcanine and Gyarados, it just matches up extremely well. And then we have the Flutter, Amoonguss, Chi-Yu to really round things out. Next up is Sohybe's team, which is just a similar team to the exact same team of Torviv's team. Again, Iron Hands is just a really good partner, matches up incredibly well. And then we've got our 9th place person, the person who did not, unfortunately, cut. We've got Flutter. Well, this team's actually pretty nuts. We've got Flutter, Great Tusk, Kingambit, Chien-Pao Dragonite, and Gyarados. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Great Tusk, I would say, at this tournament. It's been more focused on Garchomp and Ting Lu, but Great Tusk obviously is very good into all of these new Rune Pokemon. It does match up incredibly well. They're all Dark types. They're all weak to fighting, so it's just good. It's just a good type. Being a fighting type is pretty awesome right now, but we're still not seeing a ton of Great Tusk himself. Its speed tier is quite awkward. You usually need to commit a lot of resources to make sure your Great Tusk is going first, and we're just not seeing that right now. We saw Justin Karras try to pilot his old team, and he did pretty well making day 2, and Great Tusk is still like a solid mon, but it's just not what it once was. Not a king of the format. Not Great Tusk and up anymore. But I think on this team it makes a lot of sense paired with something like Dragonite and Gyarados. Gives you speed control options, potentially with Thunder Wave, and an Earthquake partner as well with both of them. And then Kingambit to round things out. I do like this team a lot. I think it's pretty cool. Unfortunate that Davide was not able to make 2, but let's skip that part and let's hop right into top 8 here. Now these top 8 players, these are a level above the rest. Paul Rios obviously is a world champion, world-class player. Amazing finish here. Top 8 is nothing to slouch at. I mean, had to play against the Gaudian top 8, which is pretty unfortunate. But Paul still, it's a great finish from Paul. The team is pretty wild. It's not something we've seen at all in the top 16. It's not super common to see Mouseape. It hasn't been performing at the levels you wanted to, but Paul was able to pilot it to great success here. Mouseape Gholdengo, Mouse Gholdengo was a classic piece in Series 2. Really hard to deal with, a really great combo, but I really like the way Paul melds that with the Mouseape. This could just be a Series 2 team, to be honest, but it melds perfectly. Just a lot of support. We've got DD, we've got Dragon Dance, Roaring Moon, we've got Mouse Ape, and then we've got Mouse plus Gholdengo to help set up Nasty Plots. Basically, the Mouse just rounds everything together and allows everything to set up. And then we have 2 support mons to just bring it all together with great speed control from Bundle, and also Arcanine with Intimidate. And also off a set, but still a very good supportive mon in of itself. I had the honor to play Paul. Paul is a beast. Huge congrats to Paul for this finish. I think the team is definitely one of a kind, and not many people are actually really running it in this tournament, which was cool to see Paul do so well with it, when I think a lot of players don't think Mouseape is the strongest and just kind of like try to dodge it, and Paul said, you ain't dodging Mouseape. I'm going to play you, I'm going to beat you with Mouseape. So next up here, we've got that same team. We got that same team, but with Iron Hands over the potential Dragon. I think it's clear, obviously, these 5 Pokemon are a mainstay in the format. Fluttermane with all of its friends, Palafin, Arcanine, and Amoonguss, it's just godlike. And what makes this so good is the defensive synergy, but also just the pieces you have give you options into almost any matchup you can encounter. You have Vessel of Rune to weaken special attackers if you need. You've got Palafin, who's probably one of the best Pokemon in the game. It has the highest base stats outside of Slacking in the decks we currently can use, so Palafin's a god. We've got Arcanine. Intimidate's always great. It also has options to Snarl or Will-O-Wisp or Howl. It's just such a good supportive Pokemon for Ting Lu and Palafin. We've got Amoonguss. Obviously, Amoonguss is a god in this format, but always a god. It's able to Spore, it's able to Rage Powder, it has Regenerator, it can constantly switch and just be a sponge. A great Pokemon as well. And then we have Fluttermane, who is probably the best Pokemon in the game, I would argue. It's got an amazing special attack stat, amazing speed, and it just brings everything together into this godlike core. Obviously, one of the weaknesses here is that almost all the attackers are physical, which makes it a little bit vulnerable to Intimidate and Will-O-Wisp, but you still have Flutter Mane to negate that, and obviously what's Will-O-Wisping but Arcanine, and Palafin matches up incredibly into that. So it's just a great core. I think it just gives the player a lot of tools to play with and to perform extremely well with, and I think that's why we're just seeing it perform so well and just constantly cut these tournaments. Obviously, Iron Hands is a slot that's a little different. We see, obviously, in the finalist teams, we're going to see a different Pokemon on that slot, but I think Iron Hands does make sense here. It gives you more pivots for Palafin. It gives you fake out tools. It helps you set up. It's just a beautiful Pokemon here, and I think it synergizes extremely well with all the buddies. And I think it is good into the Baxcalibur mirror. If the opponent has Baxcalibur, Iron Hands is really, really useful. I think these players are just gods at the game, and they're just piloting this team to great success. Now, next up, we have Julio Tarlo's team. This guy is a beast. He's been performing extremely well since the COVID times, I would argue. I played against an online tournament, and he bodied me, and I was like, man, this guy's kind of a beast. This guy's going crazy. And I don't think the hype train has stopped for this player since then. Top 8 at EUIC is incredible. With a little bit of a different team. We still have that Arc, Amoonguss, Palafin core, but instead of Flutter Mane, we actually see Gholdengo here, and we also are seeing Dragonite and Chien-Pao, which we haven't really seen. I mean, we got Chien-Pao right there, but for the most part, Chien-Pao has slowed down a little bit in terms of usage. But it is cool to see, see Gholdengo at this level instead of Flutter Mane. Most players are opting to play Flutter Mane, and we're seeing, I guess, 3 of these top 8s are all Flutter Mane lists, which is pretty wild because Flutter Mane in the tournament had the most usage. So, hey, I mean, these players are finding a way to make it work, and it is cool to see this team here. I really like the I like how this one's built. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty different than the other Palafin teams, but it still has that same core 3, which is just so good and helps Palafin just shine as a superstar Pokemon that it is. So yeah, congrats to Julio here. Next up, we got James Evans. Now, you got to live under a rock to know who James Evans is. James, familiar with the spotlight and with the success, winning Nats last year in the United States, and also doing extremely well at the regional circuit at the beginning of the year. This year, James comes back with vengeance here and places 5th. Obviously, unfortunately, losing in top 8, but with a pretty cool team. I think this is stuff that we've seen James use before. At the last tournament he went to, I believe he had almost the same team, if not the exact same team. I know he had Chien-Pao, Garchomp, Talonflame, Goldie. I know for sure. So obviously James is still performing extremely well. I believe there's an Arcanine over Hands. I think Hands is new, but obviously James familiar with the team. Came in a little bit down, but obviously coming out with this top 8 here cements James in the race for top 8, and also just a great finish for James overall. I think the team is pretty cool. We didn't really see any Talonflame. I haven't mentioned the word Talonflame once, and James here in top 8 with it is pretty impressive. I think Talonflame is still obviously very good. Priority Tailwind is super sick, and if not a lot of players are running Priority Tailwind, it just makes it better and better for those who are. Garchomp plus Talonflame is pretty nutty. It's able to just smack Flutter around, smack Chi-Yu around. I think it's just a great little pair. It's just hard to deal with. I think Goldie paired with Tailwind is amazing as well. Just an exceptional team from James, and obviously a great pilot. Yeah, I mean, kind of breaks away from the norm. No Flutter Mane, no Amoonguss, no Palafin, no Arcanine. The most common Pokemon James doesn't have here, so very cool team from James, and I think it just kind of plays to his strengths and the stuff he's been comfortable with this season. Now we're to top 4. We've got Dr. Necro. Okay, I want to talk about these teams together because they're the exact same team. They're the same 6 Pokemon with just slight changes. So, Mr. Dondozo returns with a vengeance here. Dondozo has definitely been kind of seen as not as good as it once was in Series 2 or Series 1. But Lexar here and Dr. Necro clearly just want to silence the haters with Dondozo plus Tatsugiri. Still a godlike combo. Placing in top 4 here, 4th and 3rd respectively, which is no small feat, especially a tournament this large. And I think the way that they built this team is really, really neat. It basically has 2 modes. I guess 3 modes, but the Bundle Chi-Yu, which is a very potent combo that's really difficult to deal with. Bundle hits everything for neutral damage or super effective damage for the most part. It's very hard to dodge Freeze Dry plus Hydro Pump combo, and then you have Chi-Yu lowering your special defense, which sucks. But if that doesn't work, you also have this Dragonite Glamora mode built around potentially earthquaking yourself to proc toxic spikes and just spamming Mortal Spin. It's very obnoxious to deal with if your Pokemon are getting poisoned. If you don't have a poison type of your own, it's hard to get rid of those poison spikes. And then you have Mr. Dozo and Tatsugiri in the back to clean it up. Just a well-engineered team. Funny story is I believe Lexar built the team and Dr. Necro took it from them on ladder. And basically made some changes of their own, and they both were able to finish in the top 4. Absolutely insane. But shout out to both these players. I think bringing Dozo, obviously Dozo has a pretty big fan base around it. A lot of people love Dozo, and they're all trying to use it. And so I think these dedicated Dozo players are always a threat, and it's always something you kind of have to have a matchup for. If you don't have a matchup to Don Dozo, you probably aren't winning the tournament. And, I mean, this is a super great deep run. Lexar, a relatively unknown player before this tournament. Huge accomplishment. Absolutely insane. Huge congrats to Lexar. That is just absolutely ridiculous finish here. Just sick. Gets their Worlds invite, locks everything up. What a cool tournament run from them. Cool to see the team, and it's kind of a funny story about how, open cheating got the team stolen, and they both finished extremely well. Alright, let's look at our finalists. First up, we got Gabriel Agati. I mean, come on. Agati's a beast, a god. Agati, when you count him out the most, he's gonna do well. Agati didn't have the best finish at OCIC, but he did not let that slow him down. Came back into this tournament with a vengeance and ended up placing second, which is absolutely ridiculous. Agati, I would say, is known for a player who uses very standard and very good teams and just plays them better than everyone else. Last year at US Nationals, he placed second and was using just some pretty standard Tornogre stuff, and this is no different. He's using one of the best cores in the game and is just player gapping people left and right, and is able to just play extremely well and outplay his opponents every step of the way. You give this guy tools, and he's going to outplay you nonstop. I think this team is really good. It's been a team we're seeing for a while now. I've mentioned how godlike the core here is. We got Firewater Grass, we've got Ting-Lu Flutter, and then we have Baxcalibur, which is kind of a different pick. But Baxcalibur had been picking up a ton of steam, pairs extremely well with all these tools. It usually runs Clear Amulet, so you can't even intimidate it. It matches up into Arcanine really well because of Wisp. It's just pretty potent in the mirror, and Agati was able to pilot it to a second place finish. But standing in his way, of course, is Paul Chua, the champion of UIC. Congrats to Paul. Paul is a player who, when you count him out the most, when you don't expect him to be in the stipend race, he shows up and he just wins the biggest tournament of the year. I mean, Paul's nuts. He is a player that lives and breathes the most standard, controlled, consistent Pokemon you can ever see. Paul is absolutely insane. Last year, dominating the entire game with Ice Rider, the whole format. And then this year, finally finding his footing. Obviously, Paul has been doing really well this season. He was starting to really rev up in the Series 2 regionals with Palafin, Arcamungus, plus Roaring Moon. And now he brings it back. He adds the addition of Ting-Lu, and Paul is now a EUIC national champion. Now, the real question is, where would he go from here? Obviously, the Arcamungus Palafin core plus Fluttermane is absolutely godlike. We're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing it on a ton of these teams. And I think it's definitely something that you need to be prepared for and you need to have answers to. Because I think players like Paul are going to continue to spam this. It's so obviously very good. It doesn't have a ton of very clear weaknesses. You have some of the best Pokemon in the game, and you're just able to give yourself tools into any matchup you could ever ask for. So I kind of feel like this kind of team is very hard to answer, and I think we're going to see it probably for the rest of the year. It gives very much Rinya Sun vibes. I think that this slot is very clearly exploitable and subject to change. Obviously, Paul is one of the only players who is using Roaring Moon in that slot, where most players were opting for Excalibur or Iron Hands, as we saw. But obviously, Roaring Moon didn't even show up in the finals. Paul just skill gapped Agati with the 4 basic Pokemon of Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Arcanine, and Palafin. But Baxcalibur was shown from Agati to try and beat Paul, and I think it was matching up pretty well. Paul just got a kind of a crazy read turn 1 right in Game 3 to secure him the dub. And I think that we're going to see a lot of this team for a while. I think that breaking this team or trying to change this Pala balance core is going to be the main focus of most people going into the next couple regionals. But we'll have to see. I'm excited to see where this format can go and what this meta can develop into. I think a lot of players do think it's relatively boring or kind of annoying with all the fissures, but both these players opted not to run fissure on Ting-Lu, and so yeah, I don't know. I think it's very interesting, and I'm very curious to see where we're going to go from here. I think that this core is very, very good, and I think trying to use it and learn how to use it is super important right now, just so that you can beat it in the future. Because, yeah, these 5 Pokemon are here to stay. You're going to have to deal with them. They're probably 5 of the best Pokemon in the format right now. So, you're going to have to figure out how to beat Ting Lu plus its buddies here. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope the video was insightful, educating. I hope you learned something. I hope you guys have a great and amazing day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.